This book purports to be the true story of Trapper Jack's left big toe. It was written and illustrated by Ian Wallace. As you can see from the signpost, this story takes place far from Paris, France. The writer and illustrator Ian Wallace is a native-born Canadian who's lived in Toronto and lived near Boston and has written and published a great many wonderful stories, beloved stories. Probably most famously, The Name of the Tree. But this story is called Trapper Jack's Left Big Toe and claims to be completely true. Mama and I'd been living in Dawson City for only a week when Gabe and I became friends. He introduced me to the Yukon and its mystery by telling the wildest stories that I'd ever heard. Some of them I believed, others were pure baloney. On our way to school one morning, he stopped me cold in my tracks. "The old guy living there is Trapper Jack. He's only got 9 toes. The 10th, his left big one, is inside an empty tobacco tin behind the bar at the Sourdough Saloon." "Get off." Gabe thumped me on the arm. "My mom's seen it." "No way." I couldn't concentrate for the rest of that day. Was Gabe yanking my toes? And if he wasn't, what did Trapper Jack's toe look like? Our teacher, Miss Lightfoot, said I looked lost in a blizzard. At last, the final bell rang. I had to uncover the truth. I ran the 4 blocks, with Gabe hot on my heels. My lungs felt like they'd turned into blocks of ice. Straight ahead stood the Sourdough Saloon. Over the arguing of hungry ravens, we could hear Mac the Knife playing on a jukebox. Laughter and chatter, all that noise mixing together in a boisterous brew. A sign read, "You must be 18 to enter these doors, fella. Otherwise be dust." I grabbed the latch and pulled the door open anyway. The smell of beer and cigarettes rushed out to greet us. Gabe yanked on my scarf. We can't go in there." "Sure we can, chicken." He cocked his head toward the street. There stood Mr. Ironsides, our school principal. "Can I help you, boys?" he asked. No, sir," I began. "We were just—" I shut the door silently. "Reading this sign." I'm pleased you're reading, but there's nothing more for you to read here. Perhaps you should try the library." We headed for home, past Trapper Jack's cabin, but he wasn't there. We could tell without knocking. From the road, we could see that his sled and his dogs were gone. "Tomorrow morning, before the sourdough opens, we'll come back," Gabe told me. "Then you'll see I'm not yanking your toes." The next day was Saturday, the 1st of April. When we reached Trapper Jack's cabin, his huskies began to bark and yowl and jump about. My eyes focused on the weathered skull above the door. "Arctic wolf," I heard Gabe say before the door was flung open. "Quiet out there," barked a voice as rough as rock. Then Trapper Jack appeared in his long red underwear and his gray wool socks. He tossed some bones to his dogs. They lunged forward in a frenzy. Hey, Jack, it's me, Gabe Kidler, Nell's son. My mom's working on your truck. And this here is Josh. We came to see how you are." Warm as spit and just out of bed," he said. "But you'd best come inside." We sat in the warmth of the fire while he fixed his breakfast on a wood stove. I noticed that he walked with a limp. Finally, the coffee was brewed. 3 eggs were fried and smothered with Tabasco sauce, and 2 duck legs were pulled from the fridge. He put in his false teeth, then plunked himself in a chair. "Something on your mind, boys?" I looked at his feet, warming on a bearskin rug. Gabe told me the wildest story about you. He said you've got only 9 toes. Trapper Jack laughed so loud and so hard that he just about choked on his teeth and his eggs. "Is that it?" he rasped and yanked off his left sock. "Frostbite. A decade ago, me and my dogs got caught in a blinding snowstorm out on my trap line. We fell through a soft spot in the ice." He wiggled the 4 remaining toes. "2 of my dogs and 1 of my toes didn't make it home." "Holy cow," Gabe grimaced. The space where the big ones should have been looked so painful. I felt my own toes cringe. "Where's your big toe now?" Trapper Jack leaned so close that I could see he had 2 different colored eyes, just like his huskies. "Inside an empty tobacco tin behind the sourdough bar." Gabe's grin said, "I told you so." I wanted to punch him. "Can we see it?" I blurted. Trapper Jack stared at us for some time. "Can't do that," he said finally. "I'm thinking you boys ain't got the stomach for an amputated toe. I'm thinking your bellies are soft and yeller as these runny yolks." He thrust the plate toward us. The pungent smell of Tabasco sauce caught us like a right jab to the nostrils. "Our bellies aren't soft and yellow," I boasted. "We've seen truckloads of dead things before." Gabe squirmed in his chair. "How bad can your big toe be?" Trapper Jack took a bite out of a duck leg. "Meet me at noon when the sourdough opens, and we'll see what we'll see." By Gabe's expression, I could tell he wasn't keen on the prospect. We went to Gabe's mom's garage to wait out the cold and the 2 hours. While she worked on Trapper Jack's truck, we pumped gas, and I worked on Gabe, trying to convince him not to chicken out. At noon sharp, we arrived at the Sourdough Saloon. It was real quiet, except for a 3-legged dog chasing its tail on the front steps. "Hey, boy," I called out. The stray hobbled into the street, begging us to pet him. Suddenly, the door to the saloon burst open, and Trapper Jack emerged from the blackness, carrying an old, round tin. Gabe's hands stopped moving. He looked back. "Prince Albert Tobacco," I read out loud. The sun glinted off the enamel tin, bringing a bunch of ravens swooping down from the saloon roof. "Caw, caw." Trapper Jack pried off the lid. "Are you ready, boys?" My heart pounded in my chest. Boom, 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 boom. With one deft move, he lifted out something black and shriveled and held it up in front of the sun. "Yuck!" Gabe gasped and turned away. "Biscuit," thought the 3-legged dog, and he licked his lips. I couldn't see it clearly in the blinding light. Was that thing really a toe? I had to get a closer look. "Can I hold it?" "Yeah, if you can catch it first." Trapper Jack flipped his toe in the air. It flopped end over end. I reached up to grab it. I could have sworn I saw a bit of bone and nail, and in my next breath, My stomach turned soft and yellow as scrambled eggs. I gulped hard just as the three-legged dog shot straight up. With one quick bite, he snapped up Trapper Jack's toe and took off down the street. "Give back my toe, you mangy mutt!" Trapper Jack yelled after him. That three-legged dog was faster than the rest of us. He bounded over fences and darted around buildings with the ravens hounding his tail. When we reached the river, the icy air caught Trapper Jack, Gabe, and me hard in the lungs and brought us to a halt. "Dang!" coughed Trapper Jack, punching at the sky with both arms. "Dang, dang, bloody dog, dang!" Now I knew Gabe hadn't been yanking my toes. No man in his right mind would chase a three-legged dog and a bunch of crazy ravens after a hunk of beef jerky. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault," I said. "Oh, ain't so, boy. This old fool shouldn't have flipped his toe in the air with a mangy stray around." Trapper Jack took a handkerchief from his pocket and blew his nose. Why didn't you bury it 10 years ago?" Gabe asked. "A shovel wouldn't make a dent on a bear's butt in January. When they finally cut her off, I stored her at the sourdough. By the time summer came, I liked the idea of my toe surrounded by toe-tapping music and laughter. That saloon's much more inviting resting place than frozen dirt." Gabe and I just stood there, not knowing what to say. But I thought he was right about the saloon, and the dirt, and the bear. Trapper Jack looked around the town and the surrounding hills. "This place is as wild and untamed as a grizzly. It can kill a man just as quick. When I die, I'm going to have me and my dog stuffed and put on display at the sourdough under a plaque that says, 'Trapper Jack's Last Stand.'" He danced a little jig, kicking up snow, snorting and guffawing like a man enjoying a night at the sourdough saloon. "Well, my toe lies out in the bush somewhere, unless that mangy three-legged dog eats it." Gabe and I laughed at him, jigging and snorting, until the three of us tumbled into a snowbank, startling a raven perched on a fence post. I stared at the bird. I couldn't believe my eyes. Something suspiciously black was squarely in its beak, and I could have sworn that I saw a bit of bone and nail. "That scavenger's got your toe, Trapper Jack." The raven flew silently over our heads. I charged after the bird, scooping up snow, trying to form a ball, but the snow was too dry. "Sure thing, Josh," Gabe called out, "and I've got the other 9 behind my ears. Want to yank them too?" "Honest." They looked at me like I'd just told them the wildest story they'd ever heard. It was your big toe." "Or a prune," said Gabe. "Or a blood sausage," said Trapper Jack, and he slid down the snowbank upside down. We walked back to Gabe's mom's garage. When we arrived, Trapper Jack's truck was ready. We made steaming mugs of Ovaltine with 2 marshmallows each. Sitting there listening to Trapper Jack's stories felt so comfortable that I imagined we'd been friends forever. "There's one more thing you should know about me, boys," he said. "I ain't got 9 toes like you think. I got 10. "10?" Gabe and I squealed. "But that's impossible." "Some things ain't always as they seem." He pulled off his right boot and yanked off his sock. "6. 6, he said proudly, and swallowed a marshmallow. "Well, aren't you fancy, Trapper Jack?" said Gabe's mom. When the Ovaltine was gone, Trapper Jack got into his truck and headed for home. "See you next Saturday, boys," he called out. "See you in your 10 toes," Gabe called back. "That were once 11, I threw in. Gabe's mother pulled down the garage door against the wind and the ravens as we began to howl like two three-legged dogs running loose around town. And that's Trapper Jack's story. It's all true. I wouldn't yank your toes. Sincerely, Joshua Yu. The end. So if your family ever finds itself in Dawson City, in the Yukon, in northern Canada, you can use this author's note and this website address to find out more about the real place, the Sourdough Saloon. Dawson City in the Yukon is very far from Paris, France, and it's a variety of distances to many other places. From Lansing, Michigan, to get to Dawson City is 56 hours by car. That is a long drive. Figure out where you live, and then figure out how long it would take you to get to the Sourdough Saloon. This has been the true story of Trapper Jack's left big toe by author-illustrator Ian Wallace.